You're listening to Chapter 8 of The Day Evacuation Order Went Up. Aiko's 6 days before camp. This episode is part of Stories from Camp, a continuing series of Japanese-American narratives told as quiet nighttime historical dramas. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and listen to the next chapter or the whole story on our YouTube channel or your podcast player. If you'd like to hear more, you can explore the rest of the library on our channel. Chapter 8: The Streets at Dusk. Dusk settled over Little Tokyo with a softness that almost fooled Aiko into believing the day held some mercy. The sky shifted into muted shades of lavender and pale gold, bathing the rooftops in a gentle glow that reminded her of summers before the war, when evenings meant laughter drifting from open windows and the smell of grilled fish rising from family kitchens. Tonight the air carried a quieter weight. The familiar sounds thinned, as if the neighborhood exhaled with hesitation. Aiko stepped outside with a small bundle of errands, more for the ritual of movement than necessity. She walked along First Street, her steps slow, trying to map each detail of the place into memory. Lanterns hung above the walkway, swaying only slightly in the cooling air. Light from the noodle shop spilled onto the sidewalk in a narrow strip, but the usual chatter inside had softened to murmurs. Aiko paused at the window, watching a handful of diners eat with their heads lowered, as though the notice had cast a shadow even over meals. A few doors down, she reached the corner where she and Yuki used to linger after school, trading stories about teachers and secret hopes. The bench still stood beneath the awning, its wooden slats worn smooth by years of passing bodies. Aiko sat for a moment, letting her fingers trace the grooves. She remembered laughing here until her stomach ached, remembered the warmth of carefree afternoons. Now the bench felt like an artifact, still present but unearthed from a time that no longer fit. As dusk deepened, the street lamps flickered on. Their yellow glow blurred against the edges of storefront signs, creating halos that softened everything. Aiko found herself watching the lamplight more closely than usual, memorizing how it reflected in the windows of the dry cleaners, how it pulled at the base of the telephone pole where the notice still hung. Even the shadows felt important now, as though they told her quiet stories about the parts of the neighborhood she hadn't appreciated enough. She continued down the block toward the corner shop where she once bought ink pens for school. The window display looked unchanged, stacks of notebooks, small bottles of glue, rows of pencils sharpened to perfect points. But the store was closed early. A handwritten sign taped to the door read, "Sorry. Preparing." Aiko understood the message immediately. Everyone had begun counting their own days, their own piles, their own fears. A few steps away, she passed the small music store where she used to linger to listen to records. Aiko had once stood outside with a boy from school, pretending not to care when he teased her about her taste in songs. She smiled at the memory, the faint flutter it stirred, but the smile faded quickly. She didn't know if he had already been relocated or if his family was packing in silence like hers. The thought left her with a hollow ache that sat behind her ribs. A child's laughter drifted from an alley nearby, high and bright for a single moment. Aiko turned toward the sound, catching sight of two young siblings chasing each other between parked cars, unaware of the weight adults carried. Their mother stood nearby with tired eyes, watching closely. The children's laughter faded as quickly as it came, swallowed by the quiet night. Aiko walked farther, letting the streets guide her like they always had. She reached the spot where the shopkeepers gathered each morning to sweep the sidewalks. The brooms leaned against the wall now, unused. Even the dust seemed to settle differently, less stubborn, more resigned. She knelt for a moment and pressed her fingertips to the pavement, feeling the warmth the sun had left behind. It felt like touching a memory already slipping from her hands. At the end of the block, she turned toward the alley behind her building. Aiko moved slowly, allowing the dimming light to wrap around her. She inhaled the shy scent of evening, baking bread, drying laundry, the faint bitterness of someone simmering tea at a window. These smells had shaped her childhood. Now they felt like a final chorus before an unfamiliar silence. She reached the narrow stairwell leading up to her family's apartment. The fire escape groaned softly under her weight as she climbed. When she reached the landing, she paused and faced the city. The rooftops stretched before her in dusky blues and warm lights beginning to glow. She had watched this view countless times without thinking. Tonight she let it sink into her bones. The city felt unchanged. Yet she knew it was already turning away, already preparing to move on without them. The realization didn't feel sharp, it felt slow and deep, like water pulling at her ankles. Aiko wrapped her arms around herself and took one long breath. She let the dusk settle into her memory, willing herself to remember the colors, the smells, the quiet rhythm of the neighborhood at this fragile hour. Then she turned and stepped through the window into the apartment, leaving the streets behind her for the night, carrying their fading warmth inside her chest. Thank you for listening to Chapter 8 of The Day Evacuation Order Went Up. Aiko's 6 days before camp. This episode is part of Stories from Camp, a continuing series of World War II Japanese-American narratives told as quiet, nighttime historical dramas. If you like this narrative storytelling, please like, subscribe and listen to the next chapter or the whole story on our YouTube channel, or your podcast player if you'd like to hear more. You can explore the rest of the library on our channel. And if you're a storyteller or creator who wants to collaborate with us, you can reach out anytime at redressradio.com.